Hello everyone, I'm Hilt, and thank you for joining me in this webinar recording. I will give you an insight into our web browser component, the one that we use on our Windows platforms. So let's go over the main parts that we will handle in this webinar. So first we'll start to have a look at what exactly this Windows Edge web browser is that we use for our controls. Then we'll go over the necessary things that you need to start with the browser, because unfortunately there are some steps needed to get it up and running. After that, I will show you some code. We'll start with the basic necessities that I think, uh, the easier functions and methods to get to the navigation, load from HTML or a file, some functions that are useful for troubleshooting, and how to print the content of the web browser. Then we will make our way up to the more advanced code and lesser used functionality like downloads, cookies, manipulating the context menu, and the DevTool protocol events and methods. But to get there, we will start with an explanation of what our web browser control is. So previously we used Internet Explorer as our internal web browser, but due to the fact that the support was terminated, we need to find a new web browser to use in our applications. And at that time, we took a look at Microsoft Edge that was being rolled out by Microsoft. At that time, it was called Edge Chromium, which indicates that a there was a layer on top of the Chromium layer of the browser, which was originally built for Google Chrome. Later on, Windows changed the name to just Microsoft Edge, but the base layer is still Chromium. So for our controls, this browser is currently only used in our Windows platforms. Um, and then we'll go over to what we need uh, for the deployment. So first of all, you will need a VCL UI pack or a TMS FNC core to install the controls. As I So in the TMS VCL UI pack, you have the TADV web browser, and in TMS FNC core, there's the TMS FNC Edge web browser. Those are the same. So in this example here in my code, I will use the TTMS FNC Edge web browser. For the FNC users, the difference between the Edge web browser and the normal web browser, the FNC web browser, is the fact that the Edge web browser has some specific functionality that we expose for Windows itself, while the normal web browser needs to work on all of the different platforms like macOS, Linux, Android, iOS. But for the Edge web browser, we specifically only register it for the Windows platforms. Also, something for the FNC user, you might think I don't have TMS FNC Core, but TMS FNC Core is a layer under the other TMS FNC products. So if you buy another product, an FNC product, then you already have the TMS FNC Core for you. And next to the web browser, there are a lot of other great controls and functionality that is also in FNC Core available. And if you would like to know more about that, I suggest you have a look at our website for the blogs. There are already numerous blogs on the what you get when you get a FNC product in TMS FNC Core. Now let's get back to the browser. A second requirement is that WebView 2 runtime needs to be installed. WebView 2 is based on Microsoft Edge, but you have the opportunity to extend features from the browser. So the WebView 2 runtime should normally be installed by default on machines with Windows. And you can check this in your programs and features. And here you can see that the Microsoft Edge WebView 2 runtime is installed next to Microsoft Edge. This is normally installed by default on Windows 11 machines and was shipped with Windows updates on Windows 10. But for older versions or Windows 10 machines that aren't updated, you'll need to check if it is installed. If it isn't installed, you can always install it yourself with the WebView 2 page, and it's best here to install the Evergreen standalone. This is the full package of the WebView 2. Now, Another thing that you will need are the DLL files, so the WebView 2 DLLs. So there are two different ones, the x86 version and the x64 version. If you're working on a 32-bit OS, then it's simple. Then you just put the x86 DLL in your system32 folder. But if you're working on a 64-bit OS, then it gets a little more complicated, as Windows chose to save all of the Windows Vital files in the system32 folder. So on 64-bit OS, you'll need to put the x64 in the system32 folder. This is if you want to deploy to 64-bit applications. If you want to deploy 32-bit applications, then you need to place the x86 DLL in your syswo64 folder. And you can download those DLLs as well, but we also ship them. Let me get this here. We also ship them with our TMS VCL UiPath or FNC Core, and then you have a Edge support folder in your installation path where you have both DLLs. It is important to know that sometimes these DLLs get updated when we add new functionality. When you don't update the DLLs, but you use the new code, it doesn't mean that the application will crash, but most likely the added functionality won't be triggered. Now let's get into some coding. I've created a basic application, which you can see here, where we'll just do some navigation with the URL, then have some navigation with post data as well. We can load HTML or load from a file. We'll take a screenshot, and then the two troubleshooting methods I mentioned, the task manager that will open, or the debug console. And last, I'll show you how to print. You can print to a printer or to a PDF. Let's open the application. Here you can see that we have a back button, forward, the navigation edit, and a navigation button. So first we'll do this. The most important thing is the on-initialized event. If you do something before the on-initialized event is triggered, then it might be possible that those settings won't be persisted or the code won't be executed. So here we'll check once it's initialized. We'll just enable the navigation button so we can do the navigate, and also check if the back and forward buttons should be enabled. This is done with a function that is available in the Edge browser itself, and it's called can go back and can go forward. So we don't need to check it ourselves. So once it's initialized, then we can navigate, and we do that with the simple navigate function, where we will take the text from the edit. And the web browser works asynchronous. So once we send the navigate, we'll need to wait for an event to let us know if it was succeeded or not. So this is done in the on navigate complete from the web browser. Let me show you in the object inspector. So these are all published. So here we have the on initialized event, and then we have the on navigate complete that will be triggered. So once it's a success, we will update or edit text with the URL that we've retrieved. And then again, we will update our back and forward to go back to enable the buttons if we can go back or forward. But we can also go back and go forward itself if we click on the button once they are enabled. So again, we don't need to keep track of all of the navigation that we did. So we don't need to store all of the URLs. The web browser does it for us. This is all implemented in the web browser. And the other thing that I mentioned was the post data. So we can navigate to a URL with our own data and our own methods. So here we go to a page that my colleague made for me, where we will then parse our JSON code where we will parse the name and my name. So it will say hello Gjalt. So we'll do a post of this and we'll add the body. You can also add headers if those are important. So first we'll run this to have a look at what it does. Here we are. So we already loaded the TMS software page. This is the URL that you can set in design time. So it uses this one to start up. But as you can see, the navigation already triggered, and we have another parameter added, which we use to track from where the sender was. So here, this is because of the edit that we update in here. When there is a success, we've added the parameter of the reference or referral. So if we go here to, let's say, Google, we'll navigate to it. Okay, and then we have the back button that is enabled, and we can go back, or we can go forward again. So as I showed you, you don't need to keep track of all of these. These are done internally by the web browser. And then we have the post with data, where we will go to our page with the body Gjalt, and here you can see hello Gjalt. This is the navigation, and then I'll show you how to load some pages. So first of all, you can use it as an URL, but you can also load your own HTML text. Just load HTML, and then you have your HTML code. Or you can load from a file. This doesn't have to be an HTML format. You can also take PDFs, images, XML files. But it's important that you use the directory, the full path to the file. So with everything that you do in a web browser, it's really important to always use the full path. Otherwise, it won't work. So here we'll just get the directory where the executable is stored, and we'll add our banner PNG image to show. So if we do load HTML, then we've got our test HTML text that we've set here. And if we load from file, then we'll open our image. Then we'll go to our troubleshooting functions. We've got the debug console. So on show debug console, this is the same as if you do right click and inspect in your browser, or if you use the shortcut F12. And then we have the open task manager. This is works the same as the task manager that you use on Windows. So with the debug console, we'll open a other window with the DevTools, where you can see the page build, console messages if there are errors, the sources that are used, and then messages that were sent and requested, and a lot of other things that you can use to debug your page. And then we've got the task manager, and this one is the same as in Windows, as I mentioned. So you get to see all of the processors that are used in the web browser with the memory, CPU, and network that is available. So then we'll go on with the screenshot that we can take. So again, this is asynchronous, so you can capture your screenshot with the function capture screenshot, and then once it is retrieved, we will retrieve a bitmap here, which we will assign to our the image. Then you can also print, and you can print, as I said, to the printer or to a PDF. And you can print with the initial settings, so without the print settings added. And then it will retrieve the default print settings from the browser, but you can also add your own print settings, like for example, to put it in landscape, to choose the page width and height, or to disable the background. One small thing, it only prints the HTML code, so JavaScript added images and so on won't be shown, or CSS styles for that matter. So once it is printed, then we'll get an event that is triggered, and if it goes, we put success, otherwise failed. This is just to show you, but you can do whatever you want in these events. You can also print to a PDF stream, but then you need to save the stream to a file or do something with it as well. So open the application, I'll show you. So first you can take a screenshot. Here you can see this updates with what you see on the window. And then we can also print to PDF. Let me show you here. So a success, and then it will have a look in our folder with executable. So this was the image that I showed you, and here it is, the print.pdf with the test HTML text, and it's opened the PowerPoint. So that's what we have. For the sake of printing it to the printer, here I did this just for you to show that it works exactly the same. So it is landscape and the HTML text that we had loaded. So these were the basic functionalities that can be used for, I think, a lot of the cases, but then now we'll go on to the more advanced parts. For these, there are already demo files that were added in the demos folder from the product. So if you go to the TADV web browser or the TTMS FNC Edge web browser, you will find the cookies demo, which you then can have a look at. But here I will show you just how we do it. Let's run first. Okay, I first need to stop the other one. So as you can see, we already have 3 cookies that were added. So we've got here a consent for the cookies, and you'll see here that the consent is still pending. And once I accept that, normally it should update, but there is already another one added. So we have now 4 cookies. I thought the consent should be updated, but apparently it doesn't. If we do a test, then we see some other cookies were added as well. So you can add or update a cookie. So if you keep the same, if you change a name, so if you have a new name, domain, or path, then it will just update, add a cookie. There we go. Here we have the test. And if we keep the same name, domain, and path, but we change the value or expiry date, then it will update the cookie. So value 2. Here you can see we just updated the cookie instead of adding a new one. So that is how the cookies work. Then we can also delete one or delete all of them. The delete is based on the name, path, and domain, which I'll show you in the code. So as I mentioned again, asynchronous. So we do the get cookies and then we retrieve the cookies. This is an array of web browser cookies, which are record. And here in this case, I'll just add them to the grid, name, domain, the settings for the cookies. So the other thing that we did was add a cookie or update it. So then we'll just set our record for the cookie with our values that we have. We add it, and then again, we retrieve everything. To delete all cookies is a simple call, just delete all cookies. And then you have delete cookie, a specific one. So there you need to give the name of the cookie, the domain, and the path to delete a specific cookie. As you notice here, there is a small sleep in there as well. This was because sometimes the cookie wasn't yet deleted when you retrieve the new cookies, because the delete cookie doesn't trigger an event when that it's happened. So there, the asynchronous method worked against us. So we needed to add a small sleep to be sure that the content in the web browser was updated before we retrieved them. So this was for the cookies. And then we'll go on to the download manager. Again, this is the demo that is available in the demos folder. But you will get all of the source code that was used bundled, will be available for download as well. So here in this demo, I'll go to a web page that has some sample files to download. And we'll take a large one so we have the time to do things. So I'll just take a download of a 100 megabyte zip. There we go. You'll get the pop-up where it's downloading, and we can pause it if we're on time. Yeah. So we just paused it, and now we can as well resume or cancel it. Let's say that I'll cancel it, then it's gone here. So you have the silent download box, and this removes the pop-up window of the downloads. You can also select the custom destination folder. So normally the user folder is used that is set in the web browser, which is normally the downloads folder. But here you can also switch the destination folder if you'd like to. So let's pick another one. Oh no, I want to. Yeah, so the pop-up is also interactive, but I wanted to do it silent. So here we go, and we'll download the 100 megabyte zip. And you can see now we don't have a pop-up. We can pause it. Oh, I was too late. Let's do it again. And we can pause it. Then we can resume it, and it just keeps on going. As you see, the bytes received are updating. This is an event that we have. Also, the state changed is an event that is available in the Edge web browser or in the ADV web browser. Let me show you here. So we have the on download bytes received changed and the on download state changed. And then once a download is started, we have the on download started. Where we'll check. So if the silent is checked, then you don't see the UI pop-up. And here we'll just handle if the destination file should be changed or not. Then you have the, something else, I'm sorry, I forgot. So there are a lot of downloads started. Here has the download that we give with you. This is a list of downloads that we have. So you can also check your previous downloads from that session. So from the runtime. And then we've got the variable parameters, silent, pause, resume, and cancel. So you can all change them in this event. And then you can also pause, cancel, and resume based on the download that you retrieve. This was done with the list box that we selected it, took the download object from it, and then just used the class functions, methods, cancel, pause, and resume. And here are the events that we used. Here we just update the list box with the retrieved bytes or with the updated state. And I think there is also a reason, but I'm not so sure if I saw that here. Let me run that again. You can also see the reason why it was cancelled or paused. So in progress, and when I pause it, too late. Let's try it again. User paused. So this is the reason why it was paused, and now user cancelled. So you can also retrieve the reason why something isn't downloading anymore. So those are the downloads, and then we'll go on to the context menu. This is by programming the most complicated, I guess, to use, because there are a lot of options and the API that was available was fairly restricted. So for this demo, you can see that we have the a tPuppet menu, but this is not yet assigned to uh, the web browser. This will do in code. So first I'll show you how the context menu works native in the browser. This is the one that we'll use now. So right click, and this is just how it is when you have the Edge web browser, when you have the Edge browser. But we can manipulate this. So if we manipulate it, then we'll just see the refresh and the go to TMS button. Once I click it, it will add here in the selected custom items. Do note that it says custom items, because if I click on the refresh, it won't be triggered. This is one of the limitations of the API, in which I will get when we go over the code. And then we can also use the pop-up menu that I've shown you on the forum. So this now shows as just a default pop-up menu, where you've just have the basic look of the operating system. But you can also use the pop-up menu as a native, so as it seems to be out of the web browser. Again, if you click it, dark theme. So this is the custom items. Here I'll open the YouTube page. So let's go into the code. Yes. So first of all, we have the get context menu. So once we've tried to open the context menu in the browser, it will trigger the event get context menu. So you'll have the a target as well. This means that you can check from where it is coming. So you have the context menu type. So if you just right clicked on the page on an image, have some selected text or an audio file, then you'll get the different types. Let me get back to the context menu. So, and here, if there was selected text, then it will show in the memo as well. Let me show that again, because I didn't show that here. So if we'll just have some text selected, and we'll right click, then it says selected text was latest news. So that's something that you can check as well in the event. But then here it's when the custom radio was checked. So if we changed the native context menu, we'll just go over all of the items and remove everything that isn't reload or refresh. Refresh is shown as the text, but the name of the item is actually reload. As you can see, this is called as system, because there is a difference between the system menu items, those that were added by the web browser, and the ones that were added by us, because you can't manipulate any of the system items, only delete them. So here we delete everything except for the refresh, and then we'll add our own item, go to TMS, which navigates to the TMS page. So this is when you get them, and then as you notice here on the name, it says on custom context menu item selected. So as I showed you, the system items that are clicked are handled by the WebView 2 browser itself. So those aren't triggered, only the ones that you've added. So if you need it, if you really need to have it, to have the event once it clicks, you need to add them manually. So here we'll just navigate to TMS software if the text was go to TMS. Otherwise, we'll add the memory lines as well, which you've seen. Then the open URL to the YouTube that I've shown you. Another thing is, so the tPuppet menu was built here with the two menu items and then a dark and a light. So these both have an on-click event, and this just changes the check. Uh, but if you'll notice here that if we go to the use pop-up menu as native and we'll go here to theme and let's check it to dark, then dark will be checked, but it also got triggered by the on custom item selected as well. So that's something to keep in mind, that when you're working with the pop-up menu as a native, it gets triggered by the click, but also triggers the on click event. So those are the possibilities for the context menu. And then we'll go over to the last demo, which is the DevTools protocol. Again, this is a demo that is available in the demos folder. And the DevTools protocol is the most versatile function that is available in the WebView 2 API, because you can do almost everything that you want. It is based on the Chrome DevTools protocol. You have 10 domains which are fully supported and over 40 domains which are still experimental. So it's not sure that it will work on your system, but still it has some great value. For example, the domain of the DOM, where we have different methods where we can set a focus, get attributes for a specific element. And we have events that are triggered if an attribute is modified or removed, and so on. So this is just for one domain. There are a lot of others. For example, runtime, which gives you some console API that is triggered. And let's have some networking of security, where we can get the certificates error handled, and so on. So this is all possible with the DevTools protocol, which we'll have here. As you can see, we already have the default logging. This is the, as I showed you, the runtime console entries that were added for information and error handling. And this is something that we've implemented ourselves. So you don't need to go through all those DevTool calls to retrieve them. And it's just an event that is published and is called on get console message. But here in this program, I'll just parse them to the memo. But you have different levels, text and line number that you can check. It will go to the record here. So we got the severity level, which is the info warning or error. Then we've got a URL, the URL of which the source is the text of the warning or information from the console, the line number on which it happened, and the time it happened. So these are the things that we'll retrieve in the get console message. So this is the runtime console API called, and I guess the logging that is also enabled. Then we have the methods. So the DevTool methods. Here we get the browser information with the version. So you also have, as you can notice, you have JSON parameters that can be necessary to request a call, to make the method, to take the method, to make the call or request the method. But if we leave them empty, then we by default add a open and close bracket. So this is done automatically. But for the get version, it is not necessary, so we can just execute it, and I will get the JavaScript version, the product protocol version, the user agent, and the revision. So this is retrieved from the other event called on DevTools method completed, and we also have the onTools subscribed event. This is the third thing that we can do, or second thing with the DevTools protocol specific part. So this is, you can subscribe to different events on domains, as I showed you. So here we have the network that we will use network, and then we have the events here, all everything for the network, and we'll just take the data received. So when chunks of data are received, we'll create an event which has a timestamp, request ID, and the data length. So if we subscribe for this one, and we'll just accept the cookies, we already see that a lot of data has been received just to set this. So this is for the events, and this is handled on the DevTools subscribed event. So how to call it? You've got the call DevTools protocol method, where you just enter as a string the name of the method and the JSON formatted parameters. And for the subscribe DevTools, is it just the name of the event, so domain.event, or for the method domain.method that is called. That's all. Let me show you some others that we can use. So for the DevTools methods, we can go to the DOM and do get document, I think it is. We will just receive the full DOM of the Google page, how it is built up. And for the DevTool events, another DOM event that we can use is, I guess it's called document updated. And if we subscribe, then we'll accept tests. And here you can see that just to set the search for the Google page, the document was updated twice. So here you can see that there is nothing retrieved. This is just like a tnotify event that is fired once it's updated. So with this, you have almost full control of what happens in your browser. So this is the most impressive API call that I think you can use, but be aware that what you do also might have consequences if you trigger the wrong ones. So thank you all. This was the last part of the code. One thing that I might have left is the so what's next? So what are we going to do in the future with the Edge or ADV web browser or Edge web browser control? So for the moment, there aren't any real big updates on the roadmap, except for fixes when they are necessary. We'll keep an eye out. We're monitoring the API updates from the WebView 2. The last thing that was added, I guess, was with significance was the printing. So we've picked that up and added it together with some other functionality. But another thing that we do is listen to you, our customers. So if you have some functionality that is available but that is not yet supported, let us know via a feature request. And if it is feasible to implement, and when we find the time, we will sure have a look at it and try to do it. So that was the webinar. Thank you all for joining me. And as you can see, there are a lot of possibilities with the Edge web browser and the ADV web browser. So another thing that I might not have mentioned is that we also work ourselves with the web browser. So this is a layer beneath all of our WX components, which are JavaScript libraries that are used in our web browser component. Also, the FNC memo is with the same functionality as the web browser. And another thing that was asked is that it was mentioned actually, that you don't need to add the DLLs in your system folder, but you can also put it with the executable of your application, and then it will work just fine as well. Thank you all. Thank you for joining me. I was Gert. Have a nice day. Bye.